we've been doing the Leading Learning podcast for more than 5 years at this point. And, I just feel like more and more, week over week, and month over month, year over year, I'm hearing from people who are saying, this is how I am kind of tuning into the interest in my life, the interest in my career is having that opportunity to listen while I'm driving, while I'm working out, whatever, walking the dog, cleaning the kitchen, whatever it is. I think podcasts just have so much potential. I was talking earlier about content strategy. I think for any learning business, any education business, to be thinking about a podcast as part of your overall content strategy and how you're sort of building that environment, that ecosystem around the body of knowledge that you're sort of the keeper of within your field or industry, just a tremendous opportunity. We've switched up. I think I know personally, the sort of standard interview format, just week over week, new interview, hasn't been quite as attractive to me recently. I think because it's been done so much at this point, and it's another quality thing. You got to really be good at it if you're going to go with that approach. And so we've, for example, started doing focused series around topical areas to really kind of go deep and to use the podcast as a tool where you can really get deep into knowledge and bring in different voices and perspectives around a particular topic. I think it's just so good for doing that. So I continue to be very bullish on podcasts. They're continuing to grow. All the stats are showing that. And I think it's a fantastic area for any learning business to be getting into if they aren't yet.
So LXP is a new category that's emerged in the last few years. Basically, I think of it kind of as a portal to all kinds of learning content. So we're in a time now where the LMS is not the only learning platform out there, which it had been for many years. Many organizations are adopting kind of a stack of learning technologies, and the LMS being one, but other pieces, a lot of informal content, socially generated content, knowledge bases, all kinds of other types of approaches. And some organizations have multiple LMSs, and so people have to know where to go for what, and it's hard for people to find things. So the LXP tries to solve this problem by, first of all, being an aggregator. So it's a platform that doesn't necessarily house content. It's not a repository of content, but it points to content wherever it resides. And it has some curation components. So for example, many LXPs use machine learning to crawl content in multiple repositories and index it and derive a taxonomy to tag the content. And then personalization. LXP is all about personalizing your view of all this learning content. So it can be based on your profile, your job role, your experience level, your functional area, your setting of where you work or what have you. It can be based on your similarities with other people who have similar job roles or use similar content. It's based on your learning history. So all of these factors, all these things that the system gets to know about you, allows the system to use machine learning to make intelligent, informed recommendations for you about what content you may be interested in. It uses all this information to make recommendations to you. And you can often develop your own pathway or journey or development plan by assembling this content that you're interested in from the recommendations in your own searching, and put it into a plan that you can follow and track. And some systems also allow some social components where you can share your learning activity feed with cohorts or colleagues, and people can comment on each other's learning and development. So it's kind of a front end to the learning management system and other platforms that actually house learning content that kind of pulls it all together for the individual.
Well, I think LXP as a feature set is something that's really came on inside the learning management system marketplace. Certainly it's its own category, or it started as its own category of companies. But what's happened over time is that LMS companies are, or LMS solutions in general, know when they're losing or need a new feature set. And so LXP companies evolved to really overcome a lot of the traditional ease of use and lack of focus on the learner as a way to augment those systems and provide a better experience. Now, the next generation of learning management systems are incorporating a lot of that same technology of personalization, recommendation, micro learning in general tied to skills and competencies that's driven by machine learning or AI type technologies to ensure that every learner gets just the learning that they need, which is something we've been talking about for a lot of years. This is just the new technology to make that happen.
So the LXP market is somewhat of a misnomer in that what they were designed for and what has become of them are two different pieces. And as a result, it is leading many of them privately to sort of consider themselves something else. So what's happening in the LXP space is that there are plenty of vendors that would say they're an LXP. They may say it from a marketing standpoint, but they don't see themselves as an LXP. You're getting a couple that are getting close to being a talent development system, which are then, you can't get that to B2B and B2C market. You're just heavily skewed to employees, and it becomes a tricky slope. So, you know, their whole angle of the LXP market is, and then you have other ones calling themselves now people development platform. Some just call themselves learning platform, because you can't, the biggest mistake they made, you know, if you look back and said, where did they go wrong from being what they were so differentiated, which their premise was, look, it's all about being learner-centric. Now, privately, they can say that to themselves, and publicly, they can pitch that, but you don't really hear it in messaging.
It's incredibly predictable in the e-learning industry for them to grab onto every new consumer technology and run with it, and always, by the way, not succeed. And so everything from mobile learning way back when to computer games, to AR, to VR, all these things, every time a new consumer technology comes up, it's the learning people who grab onto it and they think it's going to be the great solution to their problems. And so they over focus on it. They go to conferences, people write books on it. It's incredible amounts of money from a research and development perspective on training people trying to get up to speed on these things. It never works. There's never ever a payoff there because in a lot of cases it's predictable. They can't afford the people who actually know how to do this stuff. They want to use the novelty of the technology in order to attract people to otherwise mediocre content. They're not willing to rethink the content itself. They're so enamored with the technology itself. So I think it's a recipe for failure. And unfortunately, we're seeing it now with AR and VR, where we're doing it for the sake of doing it, and we're not having the kind of payback that it warrants it.
When does it make sense? Why does it make sense? And if you look at that, one diagram I really like is a continuum from reality to virtual reality. And along the way is augmented reality. And then there's augmented virtuality is what they called it. And to me, it's about where's the locus of the story. Is it in the real world and you're just using this technology to make you more effective? Or is it in the virtual world and you're just using a bit of the real world as a playground type of thing? You know, Pokemon Go is augmented virtuality. Because the story is coming from a virtual world. It's not really existing in the world. So I think tools like that. So I think we have real power, but again, the hype cycle. Oh, we'll do everything in virtual reality. It'll be wonderful. We'll overuse it and we'll spend lots more money and make lots of money for the virtual reality people. And then we will have a backlash. We'll have, the Gartner hype cycle, right?
I find it interesting, but design thinking to me is a buzzword in our industry, and I hate buzzwords, mostly because of the way I define them. I define a buzzword as a term whose usage is spreading faster than its understanding, and I think design thinking definitely qualifies as that. It's really interesting, and I think that there's a lot of great applications for design thinking, but I haven't seen a broad example of design thinking tied into the work that we do in L&D that is going to transform our practices. I'm seeing really interesting isolated uses of design thinking by people in our field, but not one that I feel like is transforming the work that we do at a broad scale.
My particular interest, with AI, first of all, I live in Durham, North Carolina. We have Duke Hospital here. It's our biggest, Duke is our biggest employer, and the university. And we call ourselves the city of medicine. We have celebrities and politicians and foreign kings fly here for surgeries and stuff. So medicine is a big issue here. And I know any number of people who are working with AI to help them do things like review 40 years worth of records, review 10,000 x-rays, do things in volume, do things at scale that we just couldn't do before. It's AI's capacity for being a force multiplier is fascinating to me, and I don't really understand any of it. What I do think that we have a lot of opportunity for, and it goes back to what I was saying earlier about the peak of inflated expectations, I think there's enormous opportunity in this business for chatbots. I think a huge portion of the work that is done in L&D has to do with things like customer service and call center staffing, training, and those kind of things. And a good chatbot is going to replace a lot of the humans that have been doing that work. But they have to be good. You have to, back to my point of, you have to understand what the technology is and what the application is before you can program it. There are tools that will let you do a chatbot quickly and easily. It's not hard. It is not technically a hard thing to do, but you have to understand all of the nuances of the human conversation you're trying to replace.
I'm excited by the possibilities of data, by the ability for us to, we've been talking about personalized learning for decades in some way. And you go to the average expo right now, and I say this as someone that hosts these events in times that we can get together. You will see, we offer a personalized learning platform. And with all due respect to those platforms that are out there, I don't think we've really delivered a personalized learning experience yet, because there's a difference between recommending something based on my interests and giving me the resources that I need based on my competency. And that's the elements, all the things that are necessary to be plugged in to understand my competency and give me appropriate resources. All those unique elements are there, but they just haven't been packaged in a way that there's a platform that really delivers upon it to that promise. And for me, the data and analytics situation, we're getting there. We're going to get there. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when and how quickly based on your organization and your unique context. But it's not an if, it's a when. So you need to be understanding how these platforms are being used, how data and analytics are being leveraged in your organization, so that you can, again, be ready for it, even if you're not proactively pushing it forward yourself.
We're also getting into, I think, more meaningful and sophisticated use of learning data and metrics. For a long time, we've just been nowhere with learning metrics, training metrics, especially in business. It's so far removed from business metrics. So I think we're going to see more sophisticated use of application of metrics and learning data to show evidence of impact on the business. And some of what's enabling that is XAPI, continuing to advance and accelerate in its adoption. The idea that we're pulling data from lots of different sources and pulling it all together and looking at using analytics tools to see what we can learn from the data and so on. So I think we're going to get better and better with learning metrics and data in 2021 and beyond.